see is what I know.
Well, I'm going to welcome everybody out to our City Council work meeting for Wednesday, September 25th, 2019. We'll get started with the item 2.1, review of this evening's agenda. Are there any adjustments that need to be made?
Man, I'd just like to just make a comment about Gordon's on his way back from St. George. He went down this morning for a presentation. He'll be returning a little bit late, and Tammy will be here. She have a last and I don't know about other council first.
Item 8.2 is going to be continued. South Valley Chamber, this is a miscommunication. They weren't planning on.
Which one?
South Valley Chamber.
Yeah, and you saw the emails for Grave, so that worked out.
Thank you. Any future agenda items we'd like the council like to have added to the agenda?
Not tonight.
Okay. We will get going then. We will move on to item 3.1, discussion with Rio Tinto regarding dust mitigation efforts.
So just a little bit of introduction. Piper Rhodes is here. She's got moved back and doing double duty since Matt Holton left the corporation, went for a different job. Piper's back. We'd love to have her back. She's been a great partner with us. So if you introduce Matt and Tyler, it'd be great.
Sure. Okay, so I'm Piper Rhodes. I manage our community relations and communications efforts at Kennecott. And then this is the general manager of the minerals end of our business. His name is Matt Toby. And he's going to be talking to you all a little bit. We're going to give you just a quick high-level overview of our business. Not sure how familiar everyone in the room is of our broader business beyond the mine, so we're just going to give a quick high-level overview of that. And then this is Tyler Jolly. Tyler is a supervisor up at the mine, and he's going to be talking about our dust mitigation efforts associated with seasonal dust. So unfortunately, it did take us a little time to get on the agenda, so we're kind of headed out of dust season, but we'll give you a high-level overview of the kinds of things that we do to try to mitigate dust, so that if you get any questions from your constituency, you'll at least have some information about what we do. I have this stuff on my computer. Do you want it on my thumb drive?
Whichever we
I can plug in.
Can plug in
right okay. Here. Which adapter do you need?
I just have a PC, so I think this
that one?
HDMI will work.
So again, as they set that up, we're happy to answer questions about anything. We'll try and stay on topic. We know, no worries. We know that time is precious. We want to be respectful of the time, but Tyler, as a key leader of the leadership team out there, can help. He's a little closer to the action.
She's got it pulled up.
We can answer all sorts of questions. But to start with,
is that you?
It is me.
There we go.
Here we go.
Hey, it works.
So, hey, fantastic. Thank you. So our footprint extends over 26 miles, as I'm sure everyone knows. And the aspects, the current active part of that, there's really 6 pieces to what we do out there. Of course, everyone seems to be somewhat familiar with the Big Canyon mine. It continues to be one of the world's largest open pit mines. We have one of the most productive haul truck fleets in the world. We continue to see advances there and move a considerable amount of material. We'll talk about how we handle some of the dust and specifically a couple of the projects that are going on here closest to Herriman that we're particularly proud of. If you move further down the value stream, again, if you think of the mine as the place where that all starts and the rock comes out of the earth, we crush it down to a basketball size and we take it to the concentrator. It does exactly what it says. It crushes it down even further, makes the metal float to the top, and then hauls what we don't need by pipeline to the tailings impoundment in station number 6. But as far as making value, the copper and the gold continue on down to the smelter and the refinery. Now the power plant has shut down after 70 years. So of the 6 areas, it's the one that is not currently operating. We have care and maintenance activities and some things going on there, but it's not providing power for the rest of the value stream anymore. And we've, as that says right there, we offset with renewable credits, renewable energy credits. So we're working towards whether you hear Tyler and I talk or you hear our chairman talk, It's all about trying to make Rio Tinto a green company in terms of being responsible with how we harvest the minerals out of the earth and process them down the line. And again, the stuff that we like and we need to sell as a product goes on to the smelter and the refinery, where it's condensed even further to the point at the back end of the refinery, it's 99.99% pure copper. Also, what's not on the slide is that we produce gold and silver and other things in that part of the value stream. In fact, Tyler just last week got a chance to pour the gold, as we've done for many, many decades, and see that firsthand. I did mention, I know we want to talk about dust, but there are a couple projects that we're really excited about. Currently, the mine life is 2027, but as mining goes with financials, we're always talking about 10 years out, 10 years out, 10 years out. So we could be talking to you next week. We've got some approvals in place, or I guess in process. And we had a board visit from the chairman of the Rio Tinto board last week. Very, very positive, and with those approvals, we can continue to be open for much longer. So we're working on that. But for me, one of the things I'm most proud of, I've been working here for 15 years. One of the projects I'm most proud of is the east-facing waste dumps. So if you've been here for any length of time, you're probably used to knowing Kennecott as like the 1,300-foot tall orange dumps. Well, in the last 5 to 10 years, you've seen a lot of activity out front. We've had many conversations about noise and air and light pollution and the things we're doing to be responsible there. But starting really right now, you can see some of the reclamation that's going on. And in a handful of years, actually as soon as next year, we'll see some vegetation on the lower parts of that. As we progress up, those front-facing waste dumps that you're used to seeing will be reclaimed, resloped, and planted. So we'll start over the next several years to see that continue to rise up and have a much better visual appearance facing the valley. So those are some of the things that are going on. We did say that we wanted to come talk about dust. We know we have a short amount of time. And Tyler, who's not only an employee of Rio Tinto, but also a resident of Herriman, we thought we'd have him come along and talk about what he and the team are doing up there. It's all yours, Tyler.
So to get started off, pretty big, large operation that we run up at the mine. We can go to the next slide. Dust management, context and risks, operating strategy. We run water trucks, where our water stands are, area priorities, supply contingencies, chemical suppression, and dust documentation and mitigation and escalation, kind of way we work through our dust management. We currently have 8 water trucks that we run up there, full-size water trucks. They hold about 50,000 gallons of water, fill every couple hours, so it's a lot of water that's coming out and it's going out onto the ground. We do run lead water truck operators. As we bring the operators in and out, we've staggered their shifts to fill the voids through the shift change, and when trucks are starting and stopping, make sure we keep the areas wet as we move throughout the mine. We prioritize the roads where the work's going and where the dumps are, where the work's going on. Make sure we get that covered up. Water truck expectations, we've laid down some ground rules for the operators, so they know what's going on, know what their expectations are, what areas is the priority, so when they come in the morning, we line them up, show them what's going on, and kick them out the door. They work hand in hand with the whole operation throughout the day. If they see an area, they make the calls, they get the calls to move stuff back and forth. If we have an area where it seems like a little bit of dust getting kicked up, they'll make the call, we'll close an area, shift traffic till we get them out there. They'll get on the radio, clarify, and open the roads back up to it. Over the 8 water trucks that we do have, the larger size ones, during the summer months with the smaller roads that we do run and maintain, we do bring on some smaller articulating water trucks to help us spread water through the tighter areas where light vehicles and stuff travel. You see them down along the lower parts of the dump quite a bit down there through that area, so we use that as well. Maintenance strategy plays a big piece in our haul trucks and in our water truck strategy. So through the winter time when we have the wet ground, we do a lot of maintenance on the water trucks to make sure they're available and ready for the summer times. As we do work through them, we're only allowed to have one move down at a time unless obviously one of them breaks down. So we've been working really close to the maintenance shop to get them in and out and get them repaired. If they do go in for scheduled maintenance loops and stuff, we do that at nighttime when we don't have to run quite as many water trucks. So we do assign areas to the water truck operators as well, so we know who's covering what areas and what areas they're working. Upper and lower pit, here's kind of an overview of assignment areas that we work through. So we do have 4 water stands locations, large water stands for large water trucks throughout the mine, lower pit, down the very pit bottom, up at 6190, just below the visitor center. We have a couple out on the front, out on the south dumps as well, to get the water trucks closer to the areas where the valley can see it, so. Water supply, we do have the opportunity to move water back and forth to the areas where we use it quite a bit during the hot summer seasons near the end of the day. We do draw down quite a bit of water from our water tanks, so we do have the option to shift and transfer water to keep those water stands full and move water around throughout the mine to keep the water trucks full, so. Chemical and dust suppression, we do add a surfactant to the water trucks as we fill them. To put it, it's kind of like a dish soap. Keeps the water on the roads a little bit longer, keeps it a little bit wetter longer, so.
Keeps it from evaporating.
Yeah, keeps water from evaporating as we drive over with the trucks, tires are hot, and the ground stuff, so. We also do, magnesium chloride on the auxiliary roads and the main area roads out in the front, another chemical that we use, provided we do run that several times throughout the year to keep that down. It compacts onto the road, keeps the road from getting the fine dust and kicking up. So, just areas where we ran the magnesium chloride stuff out in front. So,
Hey, I'm just curious, you sort of code 51, why don't you just call it area 51?
area 51. We didn't want everybody showing up to the line list. But that's pretty much it in a nutshell for our dust mitigation. And is there any questions in regards?
Good job.
I wanna know if the gold you got in your pour, you actually got to keep.
No, that's why I'm still employed.
Any other question, it's more of my knowledge versus other people's knowledge, to educate the public, is the piece on, people really don't understand on how much time, how much effort you put in monitoring the air quality. And I can't remember how many number of testing places you have out here to keep testing the air quality, but I know old reports from Piper did in the past was, we actually have a pretty good air quality out here in this corner of the valley versus the rest of the valley, which is good news. Can you still say that? Is it still
Yeah,
good?
so so we have a big air quality monitoring network. Utah Department of Air Quality also has their monitoring network. We have one monitor sited in Herriman, so it's in High Country Estates. Just if you're familiar with High Country, it's up above their water
That's not
tanks. I know. It is, for whatever reason, it's still called the Herriman Monitor.
We know why, continue.
Yes, and that monitor continuously reports some of the cleanest air quality within Department of Air Quality's monitoring network. So that was so DAQ had a monitor in Herriman. I can't remember exactly what the previous location was, but they didn't get any significant results from that monitor, so then they shut that monitor down. A condition of our latest air quality permit for the mine required us to install that monitor up above High Country Estates and then link it to DAQ's network, so.
Thank you.
And then I just wanted to make one plug, but I'll let Tyler go.
So we do have somebody down there that sits in visitors and monitors the whole front part of the mine through the entire part of the day from the early morning till the sun goes down. They're right out there on U-111 by 118 South. So we do have that. They do keep a dust log. There is an escalation procedure that we work through. They're in direct contact with everybody in the mine as well. And there's an escalation procedure for outside the mine when we get calls that come in as well too.
So a lot of what we're trying to work against is the visual nuisance dust. It doesn't really leave the site, but you can see it. And so we acknowledge that our view from in the pit or our view from up there is different. So we station people down below. And actually Tyler's being a little humble. We are always trying new things every year as well. So what we do really well are water trucks and spotters and making sure we can get the water to the right area. We've also tried huge foggers. We've tried sprinklers, all sorts of things, and they work to some degree, but it's windy sometimes, and that doesn't help. This is what has worked well for us, and we're always trying new ideas every year. But the things that work really well are conversations like this, getting feedback from folks, and then we're making sure that we respond when we see it.
That's pretty much what we had, but I did want to make a plug. If you haven't been to our new visitor overlook, we reopened we formerly had an overlook up in the Bingham Canyon mine prior to the main phase slide, and then we had to close that for 5 years. We reopened that late last season to our employees and then opened it to the public this year. We've seen about 45,000 people come up and visit the mine so far through the season. So if you get the chance or ever interested, you basically get to pretty much almost pull up to where these guys work. You can see inside our operation pretty much everything we do. So feel free to come visit us, and if you want to set something up, I'd be more than happy to
I've had some requests, so.
host you all. So
Earlier, I'll put a plug in for Piper. Some, Jared can remember this, you were around as council member when we designed this building apart. Rio Tinto and Piper was very involved with help getting us. That ore cart that's out there on the rails now came off the old truck stop at the top where the old business center was.
Yeah.
She helped move that through, getting that donated to the city so we can preserve that history that we have as we live next to the mine. So, always appreciate her, and you know, she's actually embraced our community very well. But we know this is probably an interim time with her because her job's gotten pretty big and broad. It's good to know you're a resident of Herriman, Tyler.
yeah.
Good to be one.
Do you guys have any other questions for us?
Great job.
Just thanks for the.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for
Thank
the
you.
appreciate it.
I need to set up the tour for that.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime you guys want to come out. So we close October 31st, but that doesn't mean that I couldn't bring you all up there after that if it works better before it snows.
Thank you so much, we appreciate it. We'll go ahead and move on to item 3.2 of our general plan update. I'm gonna guess this is gonna go to Michael since Will's not here.
I know that I don't know all that Gordon was going to present to the council tonight on this topic.
Would it make
But-
sense for us to move ahead and
It
wait until he
may,
gets back?
yeah.
Okay, we might do that.
And he was.
It's you, Gordon.
You, Gordon.
Welcome, Gordon.
Yeah, thank you. The only reason I made it back is that the UPD doesn't, or the UHP doesn't have as good officers to catch me. So, otherwise, I'd be much later, so.
You were on a recording.
Pardon?
You're just gonna say, you said Tammy first.
Right, yeah.
She'd get hit, and he could keep track.
Is Tammy back?
She's coming.
Okay, yeah.
So, we're on 3.2 general plan update.
Okay, so, what I wanted to tell you about this, so we had a brief discussion on this, but there were a few people missing, and so what's happening is we have gone through most of the, neighborhood meetings. We have, I think, 2 more scheduled, and then what we're going to be doing is taking this general plan to the planning commission. We anticipate by the end of the year that they're gonna make a recommendation to the city council. And then we anticipate sometime in the first of the year that you're going to make, approve it, or approve some version of it, whatever you wanna make it. So, the general plan is pretty solid, most of the stuff's coming together, but there's 2 areas that are kind of, that have a lot of political consternation. It has to do with Kennecott and Olympic Hills, what they would like to do. There's things we can do, you know, the Kennecott has submitted a plan that we're not necessarily enamored with. We have the Olympic Hills, which was submitted to the county, which we're not enamored with. And one of the things the general plan does is right behind that, you're going to be getting the capital facility plans for transportation, parks, water, and storm drain. We need to adopt those in fairly rapid succession. Those are extremely critical for a lot of reasons of things coming forward with the city. Now I know that we're working on the South Valley master plan and some other things, but we need more than the general plan and the capital facility plans, but those are based upon the plans the city adopts. And so, tonight, more than anything else, I wanted to talk about what we want to do with procedure. I don't necessarily want to have you tell us what's going to be there, but we can sit down with the property owners, we can put something holding what we had adopted in the last general plan. We can do a lot of different things. Mike always tells me he wants to adopt a general plan worth fighting for.
That's right.
So he told me, Mike.
That's right.
So he would really like to get it right, but we can always amend it, and we intend to do that as time goes on anyway. But we want to just kind of get a feel from the council. Are we ready to, we want to have that in place when we bring it to you so that it's been vetted by the planning commission before you see it. So we want to make sure we're putting something before them to scrutinize, look at, before it comes to you the first of the year, as opposed to have you insert something that they're not necessarily vetting or seeing ahead of time. So that's kind of there's just a lot of steps that we're trying to figure out to make sure we get you the right thing, get the planning commission the right thing, now that we're most of the way through the public process. So, I'll quit talking.
So what's the ask? Are you asking us to?
Do you want us to, typically in these kind of things, you go talk to the property owner and they end up getting in line with the kind of the vision of the city, seeing it, and it gets close, and we bring something to you guys and you ratify it. We're a little bit distant with the property owner, so it's not just inserting what they want. So we can certainly start a meaningful dialogue, try to get something somewhere. We can put a holding pattern, but what we want to do is what you want us to do on those two properties. I think the rest seems to be following a good procedure. You're going to like, you'll get to a point where you'll like what's coming through on the rest of the stuff after it's been vetted. And then I think this is the two areas that we're a little bit hazy on.
So I have just a naive comment, but, and I understand for certain that we have to respect the rights of property owners, and I do. And I appreciate, Rio Tinto was just here, and I appreciate their partnership and stuff, but I guess to me, when we're looking at this, we should be saying, what does Herriman need?
Right.
Right, we have to say, well, we need jobs, you know, certain things like that. We have to look at it and say, what does Herriman need? And this is the area that the only area that we could put them in. And come to them and present that to them so they understand why we're asking for that. You know, do we need more apartments? Do we need more of this? Do we need more jobs? Do we need more, whatever it is, what does Herriman need to really complete Herriman? Otherwise, it doesn't benefit us to bring something out saying we don't need it if it damages, you know, our own tax structure. So I think that that's the component I think that we should be leading off with, not necessarily have them say, this is what our vision is. It should be, we should be saying, analyzing what's in our city, what our city needs, and then looking at this area this would fit there, and this would be a good fit for our area, and then move that way. That would be the way I would envision it to go, but that's just my.
So I think to put that in procedural terms, right, that's what you said you wanted this to be, is I think that just sending it, doing the two neighborhood meetings and sending it to the planning commission and then they send it to us is maybe the wrong way around. We need to complete the neighborhood meetings and all the data gathering, et cetera. And then we need to have some planning sessions to look at all that data and assess those needs and what we can handle, right? Infrastructure is the big thing. We did our own study that said this is what it can handle, this is what the infrastructure can handle, pair that with the actual needs of the area and some of the other things that are going on. And then we come up with a plan that we can then go have conversations and have supporting evidence for and move that. And then once we have a plan to present to the planning commission for them to make comments on, okay guys, we've looked over all of this, this is what we see, adjust this, adjust that, and then it comes back to us. Does that make sense?
No, I like that. I think that's the right approach, because these two properties have a lot of political
Implications.
That's a really good word. Now what's the word I think?
Well, I mean, that's what they're looking for.
And you're the body that can make that.
Right, typically, at least in my experience, the last 4 years of the general plan has been basically, I call them, you know, going back to some of the developers coming here, the finger paintings. We just, well, this color is gonna be this density, and this color is gonna be this density. And when they come in, then we'll do a plan. We're past that point, like, we need to actually present them with a plan with supporting evidence of why this is the best route to go, the best use of the land. And that's really, I think, what the conversation is going to be. I just came from the first steering committee meeting for the Southwest Visioning study with the consultant, et cetera, and that's really what the conversation ebbed around is, right? What are the needs, right, of not only of this area, but surrounding areas, and what can we support? We need to take that plan to those people instead of saying, it's just this color on the map, and when you're ready, then
And I think that came out clearly in the meeting of the Jordan School District. It was West Jordan, South Jordan, all talked about the need for jobs. And that was not just a Herriman issue, it's a South to West issue. And I think, so Mike, I think what we want to do is maybe schedule with the council, work up some plans, and let's meet with the council and have some vision of the, of specifically those two properties, and then come up with something we can take to them and show them and put some things together. So that sounds like what you'd like us to do. And I think that's great, because it gives Mike something to do. And
it's really what it becomes, I mean, for public consumption, becomes more of a proposal from us to that this is why we are the right place for it to be and what our vision of it would be and
what we can do for you there.
Yeah, and if we go with data, if we
No, you're
go with data that backs it up, then it makes more sense to them. We say, look, here's why it works.
And we are working with surrounding cities, partners in this endeavor, and if they agree on the data, et cetera, then we're in an even stronger position.
Two quick comments that really kind of just dovetail into what Sherry just said. And that is one, there definitely is a component of what we need, obviously, to keep the city moving in the direction and the vision that we have moving forward that entails jobs and open space and all those things. Certainly there's gonna be components of that in the plan that they've already worked up with. So I think that it's a matter of finding where we can align those and enhance on those. And I think that that's the conversation that needs to be had. It's not us accepting what they're proposing or them accepting, it's getting to the point to where we all have that common vision together and what we're looking for out here. So, and it definitely ties into what we need. And on to Jared's comments of the infrastructure component of it. We know to have that conversation, you have to know what we can currently support and what it takes to make adequate changes to our infrastructure to go above and beyond that. And that's another discussion to have, that it's not about we're opposed to going above and beyond that, it's having the right plan in place to make sure that the infrastructure supports that. And how do we, again, work together to get to where it fits the needs of both of us.
Right. No, I think I'm hearing some clear direction there.
I'd like to real quick hear if Michael has any thoughts on this process.
Yeah, we've been talking with our consultant, and they can prepare some alternative scenarios. I think one would be, just as Gordon said, do we identify the area as kind of a land bank? We have some type of maybe agricultural, master plan, which we've done that in the past. We could also show at the other end of the extreme what the property owner is potentially asking for, and show you the impacts of their proposal. And then maybe we can model a couple of options in between. The consultant has some really robust tools where they're drawing on just massive amounts of data that can develop those alternative scenarios that then we can study. And it's not just those 4 scenarios, but it'll give you touch points of development potentials and impacts within these study areas.
So with that, I'd say that I'm pretty much in agreement, particularly with Jared, on the idea of this. We've all said that the general plan is something that we're gonna use to show what we're doing in the future and how we plan. So we should probably all have a say on it before it goes to the plan commission, so it gets vetted correctly. We show what we want, we show what we're planning. They can go find all those little details that need to be vetted out per their role, and then we can make that final decision. But I think being able to see maybe the spectrum of where we're going, trying to find somewhere, like Clint said, where we align with the property owners is hopefully will end up being a positive experience for everyone involved.
We will be having a joint planning commission city council meeting on the 30th. Maybe that could be a key topic.
Yeah,
October 30th.
okay, we'll start scheduling some
Yeah.
meetings and start getting this before you report it in the end of the year, so before it goes to planning commission, we're all feeling good about where this is lining up.
Just a couple of comments to wrap up for public that's watching or those that are here. I mean, we've focused on kind of the annexation declaration areas, basically 2 main property owners. The reason for that is the rest of the city is pretty much entitled. There's a few things that we've tasked out looking at and seeing what we can due to reduced densities here or increased infrastructure there, but a lot of those decisions we made, really what all that's left is that potential area out there. So procedurally, finish gathering the data, right? And then second, present it to us and let's collaborate on what the plan needs to be with what we've already, the input we've already gotten from those property owners. And work up our own plan, what we'd like to see based on that data, right? And then we can go talk to those property owners, then take it to the planning commission and back to us. I love it.
Good.
One thing I wanna go with that is, as we're looking at November 8th or whatever it is, we're trying to figure out how much time is gonna be allowed for that. Is this something you wanna talk a little more on that meeting, or is that still too soon? Can we start gathering more information, go through some of the process? Trying to look for some direction on.
You kinda have to tell us,
Yeah,
what do you have
when are
ready?
you
when you're
ready to give us the information?
What information will we
Yeah, so
have ready
if
to us?
we have some stuff ready, we'll include that in there, so we'll see how quickly the.
I mean, you've got us counted for
We're
the
trying to figure out
whole
whether
day,
it be
so.
your all day, half a day and a night, 3 days, I'm not sure yet, we're trying to figure that out, but, we'll get that scheduled, but also one of the main components is for us, as your team, is to, look at, strategies as we go into next fiscal year. We have to start 6 months out, and what's the council's main goals for us, just what they wanna achieve with that capital outlay money, if there is any. Now, let's find out what the list is, what's the priority from you all, and then as we start defining how much revenues are committed, we can put that in the budget. We start slotting that in, we start fitting those two up in March, we've gotta know what your desires is first, capital, okay?
All right, any further comments or discussion? We'll move on to item 3.3, discussion regarding a proposed rezone for 23.63 acres located at or near 14831 South Real Vista Drive from C2 to MU2, or from C2 and MU2 to C2 and RM for Rosecrest Pond 30.
Thank you. This item was recently reviewed by the Planning Commission and received a positive recommendation for the amendment. This is obviously just a briefing, and this has not been scheduled yet for any action. As was stated by the mayor, this property currently has a mixed zone on it. The MU2 does allow as a conditional use some various forms of multifamily development. The developer, maybe just the next screen. Oh, sorry. Wants to kind of reconfigure the zoning on the property, change it to C2 and an RM zone. And the reason for that is they're working on a commercial master plan. I believe we have briefed the council before on, just to give you some numbers of the type of density or development patterns they're looking at. This does include a 867 parking structure garage. It has a 120 room hotel, at least conceptually that's been proposed. And then it has 167,000 square feet of office space among all the retail pads that you can see on this plan. And this is only one half of the project. They're still working through the tenant layout and kind of product mix on the other half of the project. So there would be a subsequent zoning request. This is only for one half of the Academy Village
Are we expecting
development.
any RM requests on the other side?
I believe so, Gordon, is that correct?
Yeah, so what they're doing is they're putting this together specifically for sports housing, so that people that are using, like we saw the Stallions or the
Right.
Warriors or other groups,
Area.
so that they have this housing for athletes to come and do specific training in the facility. The reason you're not gonna see this rezone for a little bit is gonna come with amendment to the development agreement, and we're waiting for the design guidelines to come through the planning commission, so this will all hit you at one time. But the reason we wanna show it tonight is each time the planning commission recommends something, we will bring you the piece to see it, and then eventually you'll see the whole thing together, and then we'll bring it to you for approval.
So we won't schedule this for action right away. We'll wait till the other parts of the project mature and come to you.
For clarity, previously this was zoned, or the way it's currently zoned, does allow for multifamily units. Were we increasing the number of multifamily units from what's already approved at all?
So they had a mixed use zone that they wiped out, in favor of putting, so it's.
So I think the question is, and it's the same question that I have written down, is, especially for public consumption, is why the change? We're going C2, MU2 to C2 RM, so, I mean, what's the technical difference?
Yeah,
Why is the change needed?
They're obviously reshaping where that multifamily would land on the property. And then we'll have to take a look at this. The development agreement allows the developer to add additional properties to their agreement area.
That's
And
one
that
issue.
Yeah, so that's
agreement,
definitely what I'm talking about.
yeah, allows them to extend development across this property.
So the, kind of the issue, and so looking through it, I can infer that it's the shape that matters, and we've seen this
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah.
The thing that maybe raises a concern with a rezone that's not done concurrently with actually building the place is you're going from a mixed use where there would have to be a mixed use
Commercial
to
component,
specifically giving a resident, multifamily
Right.
residential.
Right.
If they're zoned separately and there's no security there, then we're leaving ourselves.
You wanna make sure you have the amendment to the development agreement.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're
Yes.
not gonna, so that's back to the point I was making. You will not see this for approval till you have the full package with the site plan, all the stuff for the amendment of the development agreement. So that's why we're not giving you just a zone blanket with nothing else. It's gonna carry everything else with it, the office, the, parking structure and all that stuff's gonna be a one package. So the planning commission has seen this, they're aware of this, and so they're recommending approval, but again, none of this will hit you till you have a whole package.
This is good to kind of get this piece of it.
All we're doing is just
So,
informing you.
I wanna make sure I'm getting the information clearly. From what was previously approved, are they increasing the number of residential units?
No, they have a fixed number of units they can have, and they are not exceeding that.
So they are not increasing the number of apartments in this area?
And they, and you're gonna get a rezone for the other one, those will both hit you, but they're all coming in another short period of time.
So just judging from that, the numbers probably actually reduced.
I assume so.
We could do
I
a
know
little
that's one of the
analysis
things
and
we're
play
always
with
gonna
the
get.
exact numbers,
It's one of the things we're gonna get beat up over.
we didn't, I don't know the exact number, but it appears to be a wash, so that's what I'm thinking of, but.
So if we can just have that clarified for us, just so that
Next
our
time we
public
prepare
knows
that.
that we're not going to put in more high density, they're working with us to
Yeah.
bring a better product, so. Any further questions or
Yeah,
discussion?
I do. On our, in our packet, it says, the South Hills Development Agreement allows property to be purchased and allows additional units to be placed on the purchased parcels. So I've never seen a copy of this development agreement, so I was requesting a full copy of that, not just amendment, so ASAP as soon as possible, if you can get that to the council. I wanna read that and understand that, cause when I read that, it makes me feel like they can buy up any adjacent property and this development agreement would apply to anything they buy, is that correct?
So the way that this works is if they buy property, they get, I believe it's 4 point, I can't remember. What?
4.5.
4.5 units per acre on any property they purchase. So that was their development agreement.
Any purchase in this, any
No,
property
just in
the
their,
city?
just their adjacent property.
Has to be contiguous.
But they can purchase property anywhere along there, cause
Yeah,
keep
but-
purchasing
okay.
and purchasing and they get this?
Well, let me back up. So the way it works is we have a plan, and in some of the plan it says, this is certain densities, this density, so this is 2 units the acre. Now, if they buy that property, they still only get 2 units the acre on that set of land, but overall they increase, they have 4.5 units the acre, but they can't use them. They have to find other property to place them.
But that feels like it binds us to that, it feels like it binds this council to allow that kind of density on property that wasn't
Ever intended.
ever intended to do that.
So what happened a long time ago, South Hills was a lot bigger project. It covered more property than what Wasatch is today. So they came in with the development agreement on all the property, all got planned. As you go up the mountain, the densities are a lot less. There's no townhomes or apartments or anything up there, it's just single family. But what they did have in the development agreement is if they buy an adjacent piece of property, the development agreement goes onto that property.
Even if it's zoned differently.
So the development agreement, I believe, we'd have to sit down with John and talk about it. and see how that goes. Right now, so here's what you're gonna see. Rosecrest owned this property. Their development agreement trumped, it was what was recorded here. Well, for Wasatch to put its development agreement over the top of it, you're gonna see an amendment to Sorensen's to eliminate this property, because we can't have two development agreements on the same property, so you're gonna see that. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna give you copies of both development agreements, so you can see the whole thing. In that has the exhibit showing you the areas and what they can use the density for. So they will leave a ton of density on the table they just can't use because of just the way it's written. So they don't get to use all the density that you're hearing. They get to use what was shown on the map.
Okay, because I just find that troubling. It feels like it binds this council to something that was not intended, or that we should be able to make a decision on.
It just seems crazy.
Yeah, I'm super uncomfortable with that. I'd like to see the
We'll get
language
that
in
for
those
you.
documents, because, I mean, when anything that I've experienced since being here, it has a legal description of the property that development agreement is attached to. It doesn't say, and if you want to buy a bunch of other property, we're gonna let you have that too, because that locks these people in at old ordinances, you know, even our parking
Circumvents any
ordinance, all
planning
that kind of
studies
stuff.
or anything.
And so then we just continue to spread a problem. That makes no sense to me.
Okay, anyway, we'll send you the development agreement so you can read it and understand how that works.
Okay.
Last night, it was really interesting. I went to the Soul Ops apartment thing.
I didn't even see it right.
I went there and I kicked the field goal, but I missed it. The guy is better than I am, but I missed the net and everything. Anyway, the point being is this. That is everything they described it to you.
Mhm.
If you go through that facility, and when you see what they're doing with the clubhouse, it is mind blowing. So going through those units and everything, they
It's
hit
a
a
quality
home run.
project for sure. And
So-
I love that they have that innovative technology about not just solar, but each unit has a battery. So it's not just like solar and you go on the grid and you get credits, but you're charging up your battery
In
in
your
your
own-
unit.
yeah.
Yeah, it was incredible, I agree.
Yeah, from your phone, you can unplug it, turn off the lights, control it, and do everything in there. The last time I saw that was in Space Odyssey 2001, and how it killed all the astronauts.
Well, you know, when I went on my own tour, the guy from London, I forget which company, that London company was there with, and he was chatting to me, and he was like, you have to understand how unique this is. This is amazing, even for us to come and see this. So this puts your community really on the map with this kind of stuff. It was really impressive that even those people from, you know, our country were saying, you have to understand.
Yeah, there were a
these
ton of
things don't
people
happen.
coming in. There was a convention at the Salt Palace that they brought in, had a big reception. I didn't stay for the dance. Anyway, so.
Or the open mic.
I saw it, but I just had, the treats were great, man. Holy cow. I did take some of the treats. But, anyway, I won't bring that up again. But this is the same group we're talking about, this development agreement, so it's,
Well, and as far as this particular group goes, I've said this before.
so I was just trying to.
They've been absolutely the best to work with.
For
Everything they've done has been top notch and better than what they've told us in a lot of cases. It's just the premise.
No, I understand. I was just, let's give you guys some development agreements to read.
Perfect. I really appreciate that. Thank you. That would be my comments.
Any further questions or comments? Okay, we'll move on to 3.4, Community Coordinator Program Discussion.
Okay. But there's actually nothing in that.
Right now.
So what we want to do
Seriously.
is,
Pretty rubber.
the council had some concerns about the, community coordinator program, so we just wanted to talk about it, so you can give us direction on what you'd like us to do, any changes or keep it the same, and then we'll go do that. That was our intent.
So,
What kind of,
go ahead,
Go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I say I was kind of the burr in the saddle on this one, as it were, I guess. I've gotten consistent feedback from several different meetings that residents are walking away with the feeling that there's nothing I can do about this. That this is just a format, they were flat out told at the meeting, this is just a formality, we're just checking this box. We, the developer, don't have to do anything that you say, we're required to do this. I've had some people tell me that, I mean, this is perception, but whether it's the facilitator or whoever's representing the city or definitely the developer, they're walking away with this perception. If it's just a one-off, it's a one-off, but I'm consistently getting that feedback from meeting after meeting. And I think that this is a good program. I mean, when we kicked it off, we said we would review it on a regular basis. We noticed lots of differences between other communities. It's been tried in, and we need to try it ourselves and make adjustments. So I think this is just one of those kind of reflection and adjustment points. If people are I think if anybody's walking away from one of these meetings with that feeling, that perception, we need to change something. That's true, because then it's creating an unnecessary problem for us. So whether that's, and I don't know what the issues are, because we haven't attended any, we all agree we wouldn't. I made comments that I would like to at this point to just observe and see if we can figure out where the disconnect is. But whether it's, handing a written statement to everyone that comes in that no decisions have been made, explaining exactly what this is and why the council's not there, if it's making an announcement at the beginning and the end and handing them something in writing, whatever it is, but people are walking away feeling disheartened that this is already done deal before it's even gotten to City Hall.
And it may be good to have a city council member there, maybe 2, but never 3, unless we get a chance to notice it.
I don't really want to go.
I
I don't really want to go to
think-
any.
I
think
don't
that
agree
defeats
with that, to be honest with
Yeah,
you.
I think that defeats the purpose. If I were to attend, it would be to just observe and see what changes we need to make. I think if we attend on a regular basis, it turns into something completely different, and that's not what it was intended to be. I think we just need to figure out where the disconnect is so that people aren't walking away with that perception.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, Kermit's really here. One, the program's been very successful. We know that, but this is probably a discussion because we want some direction, but, because you're hearing from residents who are attending.
I'll push back on that one. As far as I can tell, it's causing me way more work with residents than solving any problems. So as far as being successful at this point, I think it has the potential for success, but we need to make some serious adjustments.
I guess I can go by the numbers. There's been a few. We've had over 30 of them, but that's a discussion we need to have. But when you think about, having council there, because Jared, you remember back when there were a meeting we had in your neighborhood that went really sideways on us with the residents and staff, and council was there. And I remember the next morning very well because I was tasked with trying to solve the issue, and some of this kind of arrived out of that discussion to let the residents meet with the developers and staff and council not be present, so they really got to network with the developer.
You do have to have somebody there from staff to make sure that accurate
Yeah, and all they do is make sure that the facilitator's there to handle it.
But even the I mean, that'd be interesting to hear from I've heard from a few facilitators that, what, in this instance, what else am I gonna tell them? That this is already done.
Which is interesting, is the residents, if they feel that way, that's unfortunate, but we also have some success stories that you're not hearing about.
Can I ask which facilitators are telling you that?
Well, we can talk about that.
Okay, well, because the reason why I asked is because I spoke to our facilitators regarding this, and I've not heard that, so I'm really curious.
One, that's the thing, is if they're feeling that themselves and they aren't saying that, it still comes across to people, So like I said, wherever the disconnect is, we need to fix it, because nobody should be walking away from any of these things thinking that this was a total waste of time, this is a done deal, they've already made some deal behind closed doors, all that kind of
Because
garbage.
we put a lot of investment in this, and that's my concern, because, okay, this is more staff time, blah, blah, blah.
That's the thing, is we're asking a lot of
We do.
staff, and
And
if that's the result.
we've had, like I said, we've had those success stories, but if we need to tweak something, let's tweak something, but like we've already done, because you're hearing from the residents, if they go this way, and now we're just giving you an audio version, you listen to yourself, you take your own takeaway, what was discussed.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I guess for me, I don't want to feel uninvited to it. If there's a meeting that I feel like it would be important for my presence to be there, I am not Angelina Jolie. People don't know who I am. I can walk into a planning commission meeting and say.
Oh, you're more important than yourself.
Well, people don't.
When you walk in the room, I notice.
But a lot of, you know what I mean? I mean, as a general rule, it's not, everybody doesn't go, oh, you're on the council. And people are like, oh, and who are you, right? And so I don't think it would be disruptive unless I made it disruptive. And so I would like not to feel like I'm banned from it. If I felt like, oh, I really feel like I should be to that one, just to listen and observe. I don't think that we should take a a big active role in it, but just to be there to listen and observe for myself. And I'll tell you another thing, and I 100% respect developers that are trying to make a living. I understand, I respect that, but sometimes, you can run away with something a little bit if you don't think somebody's there that can check you a little bit on it. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, don't make that comment because you know that's misleading, and I'm gonna sit here and you're gonna know I'm listening to that. Do you know what I'm saying?
It helps check it.
Yeah, and so I just feel like if there's a meeting that we think, I really feel like I should be to that one, and if we just take that role of just
Wear a hat and sunglasses.
yeah, I mean, do you know what I mean? I don't even have to do that.
I don't think the city council should ever feel like they are not invited to something.
Well,
I think that would be wrong.
For sure, I
Here's,
But I would say it will change the tone of the meeting.
yes, here's
they
my,
know who you are.
my thoughts.
But I would think that the groups that attend those meetings know who
They
we
know,
are.
they know.
Oh, gosh.
So, a couple of thoughts. One, I haven't had the same feedback that you have, from the residents that have attended those. In fact, I've had some very positive feedback about that. Now, I haven't heard anything recently, and obviously different meetings, different scenarios of those things. So I think that's probably why because I wasn't hearing that, why I may have pushed back a little bit on this as we started to discuss it a little bit more. To your point though, absolutely, if that's the impression that's coming out of these, then we need to review and we need to make a tweak if it's warranted, because that obviously is not what the premise of this program was designed to accomplish. The premise was to give the opportunity for a project to be presented to the surrounding residents and for them to have comments, express their concerns, and the opportunity for the developer to address those concerns prior to it then beginning the formal process, through the planning commission. And to your point, Sherry, I there's some days I can go to the grocery store and walk through there and nobody will say a word to me, and that's great. And there's other days that I can't. And I agree with Tammy that, the ones that are really paying attention, the most part, the ones that are really active and involved and stuff, I think they know
Yeah.
who their
The ones
representatives
that
are
really doing that.
and who they are. And again, I don't want to say that we're not invited, but I don't want us to change how the original dynamics was designed for that interaction to take place. Again, if it's not happening the way we designed, then let's make the needed course corrections to make it happen. But again, I think to some degree, as soon as a council member walks into the room, it can start to change that. Maybe for the good. I'm not going to disagree with that. But again, I am a little bit hesitant to say that we should be there because I think it just does lend to start to change maybe how that conversation may go if we're not in the room because as soon as we walk in the room, I think the residents are just going to expect when they hear something that's concerning, that now it's up to us to stand up and voice it for them, because that's our job. That's why they elected us, and I want that to still be allowed and to be encouraged to have the residents to have their say, so that it goes through the process as designed. And again, I don't know what that necessarily, if there's a change that needs to be made and what that change is, but I would like to hear a little bit more, I think, from Sandra, who's, I think, been to, are you at all of them?
If I'm not there, Bryn has attended for me.
So I'd like to hear, I guess, a little bit from them and their perspective, because again, I haven't had that same feedback, to make sure that, at least from staff's perspective that's there, because usually, I think, there's always two sides to every story, and the truth's usually someplace in the middle, right? And so I think before we jump one direction, we should try and get the other side of that, at least from the two that are primarily there, and identify where those tweaks are. I'm all for making changes if it's warranted. I just don't want to be drastic. We don't have to be drastic.
Well, I agree with everything that you just said, except I don't think there's sides here, right? There's nobody's wrong, nobody's in the wrong, nobody's doing anything.
No, I agree, yeah.
I think, I definitely want to hear from them. This all kicked off with my comment in a conversation saying I actually would like to go sit in on one of those to hear what's being said, because I'm getting consistent complaints sort of thing. So there's no sides. We just need to make any adjustments that we need to. Another concern of mine is that I think we talked about this when we first put this into place, and I'm looking at a few staff members that when we first talked about this, it was, oh my gosh, do you guys understand how much time and effort this is gonna take, extra
Yeah,
meetings?
hours.
I do not wanna go sit at these every time there is.
Oh, they're fun.
Right, in addition to everything else that we're doing, it's absolutely impossible, and we're asking that of several of our staff members. So this is a lot of work. I guess where I'm coming from is that we need to assess it regularly. Is it workable? Is it doing what we want it to do? And if there's changes to be made, let's make changes, but we can only do that if we review it. So I'm not pointing the finger at anyone and saying you're doing it wrong, or this is your fault or that. No, it's just what's going on, what's suggested changes do you have, and let's try it and do what we said originally was review it every year.
When I looked at this to all of you, if you don't mind just for a second, is one of the things we were concerned about as your team is if you decide that you want to give us direction to so you can, that's fine, that's the direction we'll go. But then when we're sure you showed up, we gotta get notice as a meeting.
I don't think any of us
So
should have,
whatever
there
you
should
come
be
up
more
with,
than one.
just, we just want that clear direction, cause that would change that dynamic, cause now three of you there, you can make a decision.
I don't think there should ever be any more than one of us there. If there's any of us there, there should never be more than one. But that's my opinion. But another issue that I've had, and I can only speak for just my own experience on the one that was in my area, and then I know this happened the other day, is I think the notification time is too short. Literally, when the Danzies did theirs, people started receiving notices on Saturday, and it was on Monday. That, to me, that's just checking off the box. It's not really a good intent of trying to bring out a lot of people and neighbors. I think there needs to be, and I know it's difficult because we're requiring this of whoever's doing the development, but there needs to be some lead time so that people actually have an opportunity to schedule it on their calendars, arrange their schedules or whatever to be there. There's not enough notifications.
I'll tell you this, we do follow our policy with that and get that notice, what we found out. And I don't know if we tracked it for a while. This is not pointing fingers at the U.S. Postal Service, but we found out that they were delayed with delivery time. In fact, there was a time we were getting our mail here every day.
Well, if we know
They're
that's
short
the
on
case, then
manpower.
we need to
Well, so
adjust our
we
time.
did go back
That's
and
frustrating
adjust
to
it.
us,
It
so
was
we
7
like, let's
days,
step
we
up
got
even
to
earlier.
10.
Yeah, but I know even in
But I got the same thing with the most recent,
That's what we
one,
should
we got it the day before.
the day before, yeah, and so if somehow we have to figure out, obviously the mail, I have paychecks I haven't gotten for 6 weeks, so whatever. So, and their company is in Salt Lake, so.
Yeah.
But there are so many avenues that people get their information from that is not the mail, through all of our social media and stuff. We have to figure out somehow to be pushing that out.
Do they push
So
those out on their
They do,
pages?
so they all,
'Cause they're
there's,
not ours.
every community has an
Right.
outreach page.
Right.
That they've tried to push throughout their communities. In fact, we had all of the community coordinators joining each other's pages
Yeah, I
to
saw
help
Should we
with
put it on the
posting.
city,
That's what
on
I'm
the city's
wondering.
main page? Because there's several of these that have actually happened like around the corner from me. I had no
We
idea
give
they
them
were
the
going
impression
on
it's a city
when I get phone
meeting.
calls.
Again, it changes the tone because it's not a city meeting.
True.
So that's all I'm asking, cause we can do whatever. So it just depends on what tone you want the meetings to take, cause we can put them on social media. We also have our
No matter what,
we did
people
a
think it's a
community
city.
calendar
Yes.
page that is separate from the city page. So we can put it on all of those as well, which is just kind of a calendar of all events in the city that aren't necessarily city hosted.
Are
And
most
so-
of them held here?
The majority
I
of
mean,
them
people
are.
think it's a city.
But it's a city required event, so it's a city meeting. I mean, we require the developers to have these meetings. So it's a city requirement for them to do the development. And the other thing too is, and I appreciate that it's meant for these neighborhoods that be mostly impacted, but anything that happens in this city inadvertently affects everyone else. You know what I mean? If we have 1,000 homes out by me, it's gonna affect everybody downstream. And so I don't think it ever hurts for more, I'd rather more people know than less people know. And I don't wanna
And that's why all of the facilitators joined each
Started
other's
joining that
pages
thing,
so that
yeah.
they can start
You
sharing.
know how that
information.
evolved is actually went to our side where we felt like whatever it means would be too much push from the city's perspective and not letting the residents have their voice with the developer.
Right.
So maybe we swung way this way, trying to protect everything, protect the residents so they have their time, but maybe we need to find that balance.
Well, we also have our text alert program, so we can send text alerts to everybody that's in that group and
That would
make sure
probably
that
be
they at
even
least
more
get a
effective.
text.
And what I don't want to, and I can see printer there, but I don't want it to turn into, 8,000 people there and it's like chaos and crazy for you either. Somehow I just wanna find the balance there so that just make sure that there's enough notification that people don't feel like, oh, great, I got this yesterday and this is tomorrow. Obviously, the city doesn't
They're
care
trying
about
to hide it
they're
from
trying to hide it from us, they're trying to round this through, right? Cause that's the comments that you get.
Cause like it or not, it's viewed as the city.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way to get around that, we've made the requirement. Meetings are happening here, I mean, it is a city meeting whether we're there or not.
Yeah.
And some of the developers that we work with, you get, one in the room that's actually been willing to go, not just one meeting by way of your farm, but have 2 or 3, whatever it takes. To hear enough from the residents, that tells us they're trying really hard to hear from the residents, so.
Well, and that's what I chalk it up to as a success. Sitting in the last couple meetings with Mountain Ridge, listening to the concerns of the residents, watching the developer listen to those concerns, and then come back and do another meeting to show his changes. His very first comment when he started the meeting the last time, they applauded him until they thought he had taken out units. But do you know what I'm saying? Like, he listened and he made the changes that they wanted. So to me, that's a success. That's building the relationship. After the meeting had ended, I was trying to kick them out of the building because it had gone so long. They wanted to still talk to him, and he was willing to sit and talk to them. So to me, that's the point of the program, is the relationship building. So.
And have those discussions ahead of time,
Yeah.
rather than
Yeah.
do all the
Yes.
planning and then bring it to us and have theirs. Absolutely, that's the purpose.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
And then to touch on the one thing Sherry was saying, I think you were talking about promises being made or saying something because they're filling the crowd. Minutes are taken, and we actually did have a neighborhood meeting where a developer promised to do something on a development that came back. And it was something that staff could not require him to do, but the residents kept going back to him. So in
Oh, that's
defense of the facilitators, they're taking those minutes and they're putting down what is being said.
Oh,
So-
I definitely trust that.
Yeah.
We have drafted a statement for them to read. Do they read that?
We
the
were
beginning
waiting
of the
for
meeting?
council to decide.
And we
We
could
did
edit that.
actually have them read it as
At the last one.
at the last
Yeah, I was
meeting,
gonna
but
say,
we
I
were
thought they
waiting
read
to
it
hear back
at
from you if
last
that was
one.
the
So that,
statement you
that's
wanted.
my question is, if any of the meetings, whether they went well or not, by anyone's description, I guess, what would help? Because in my opinion, no one should ever walk away from one of those going,
I agree.
"Suck,"
Waste
right?
of time,
So, does that statement or a statement like it, how do we do, is that going to alleviate that?
Well,
Do
I
we-
think again,
Edit to
it's,
say that in there.
do we,
Right, well,
do
it does
we
say that.
hand it to everyone? Do we require that wording to be on the notice that's mailed to people?
well, it's stated throughout the meeting as well.
But
Because I
people are
know that,
still coming away.
but you can't control a person's perception either.
Right.
And
And
they,
so
and
you
were
guys
they,
can
there-
push
and were
it out
they
on
there
your
when that was
pages what
said?
the
Did they
purpose
come
of
in
that
early,
meeting
come in
is.
late?
Gotcha.
That's a good idea.
Like, you guys can educate your public through your pages on the
I've
purposes of
spent
those
way too much time
meetings.
educating people. It's like I have other jobs to do, seriously. That's why I'm kind of up in arms about this, is that I'm done
This
spending time
program
on
is
it,
costing you too
telling
much
people
time.
that no, we've not made a decision on this. I had to arrange it in my own meeting with an entire neighborhood, 50 people in somebody's backyard, to dispel what was said at that neighborhood meeting. So, I mean, like,
I
we
think
need,
at that
we need to
point in
nip
time,
it at
maybe-
the source.
Maybe you invite the developer too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
If you're
have
gonna
the
hold, you
developer
can
there
hold
so
your
that
own
he
meeting.
I don't ever wanna do it again. That's the point is, I never wanna do it. I shouldn't have to do that, right? If it's creating extra work for any of us that way, then it's not succeeding.
Yeah.
So, how can we prevent
I don't
that
I think that is the
perception
one
my
reason
question.
staff does, because I've gone to several, I don't ever talk, I'm mostly there to listen, but that is the only time I do speak.
Yep.
Is if there's a procedural thing that they're not, saying correctly. So you just
But
wanna
I-
clarify that stuff right up front, that's not, and I've never been to one where there was any they've brought it up, was this already just a done deal?
See,
And
and
I've
that's what I was
never been
gonna
at one
say.
where that's been said
I've
before.
never heard the developer say, I'm checking the box and this is a
Yeah.
done deal. I have had residents ask.
Yeah, for sure.
So are you telling me they've already approved you and you're just doing this to check the box?
Yeah.
Those were their words.
Yeah.
And the developer had said, no,
Every time.
no, I still have to go through the process. There's no guarantee.
So I do like that cause we hadn't got the minutes before, I've only gotten the last 3, right? Yep. Yeah, and so that is a big difference for me, because it's like, I don't know, I get the minutes, but the minutes are again someone's, what
Summary.
they're writing down, what their
Aren't you getting
perspective.
the recording, cause it's attached as well?
Yeah, that's what I mean, I've gotten 3 recordings.
Yes.
But
You just start doing
yeah, and so that's a game changer for me also, because even if you read the minutes, it's like, I'm just reading what somebody
Right.
wrote down their perception of it too. And so having the recording is a big deal, because, you know, if you're driving, you can listen to that, you know, it's like,
Yeah, and that
It's
is
been a
a
good
change
piece
we're
of
doing. We're
addition.
having them have a little recorder for every meeting.
that's a big difference to me.
And that
so
makes
I
a
can
difference,
listen.
because then the presenters know they're being recorded.
Yeah, and,
Right, that part of it.
and when somebody comes to you and says, hey, this is what was said, or we feel like this is what happened, then you can say, well, I listened to the recording, and I didn't hear that.
Sam, from, how many meetings now have we held?
Over
this
30.
program? Over 30.
And we're 2 years this month.
Okay, so we've got some history now, and you and Brent have been to them. From staff's perspective, in terms of things, what, are there changes that you think needs to be made to the process from your perspective that you can give back to us to consider as we continue to talk about
I
it?
think we've made those changes. The 10-day noticing, I think, has helped. The recording of the meetings have helped.
How long have we been doing the
We've
recordings?
done it the last 3
Just
or
the
4
last
meetings.
couple,
Okay.
yeah.
So
that
that's
helps
a
us
procedural
out.
change, okay,
And it
great,
helps the facilitator too.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Anything else that,
I have one on my list.
Oh,
I think doing subdivisions is probably an issue. Because as you know, subdivisions are a permitted use. And if they're coming in with a 3-lot subdivision, 4-lot subdivision,
It is kind of.
it is a done deal kind of, and so that's hard for them to, so, you know what I mean? If
maybe we
if they're doing
relook at
4
the
half-acre
ones we
lots and it
actually
meets the
require.
zoning, it is kind of a done deal. So I think it makes it difficult for them to do the meetings in that situation, because it's informational, but they really aren't gonna change anything.
Yeah, and if it's not
Zoning-
worthwhile to
zoning
do,
is
why waste
completely
everybody's
different,
time?
you know?
For something like that.
Zoning is where you want that input up front, right? That's where they can
If something's
change it.
changing.
Right, right.
Even the one you guys just barely sent us, it was like, it's a little tiny subdivision,
Mhm.
right? And it's like, well, staff had to spend an hour here, you know what I mean?
But can I
It's-
tell you
yeah.
a positive that came from that, the Godale one? Residents got to meet each other. They didn't
Well,
know
there
who
you
their
go.
neighbors
So
were,
they're
and
kind of
that
a
was
neighborhood,
the
yeah.
comment to me at the end of the meeting was, this was awesome, I finally got to meet who my neighbors were.
Was it worth
So-
was
it
it
wasn't
worth
worth all the
staff's
time,
time
yeah.
to put together a neighborhood
It was
social?
a good time.
But I was thinking that same thing when I listened
Yeah.
to it. It was like, well, it was great, it sounded good, everything went
Yeah.
well, but it's like, wow, it's pretty small and stuff has been.
You know, and maybe a 100-lot subdivision, maybe a larger,
Yeah,
because there's usually more going on there. But we have done, I can't tell you how many for 2, 3, 4-lot subdivisions.
Well, let's
They
make
just-
those kind of changes.
Right,
and
so
give
that's
us those
probably
suggestions.
one I would-
Let's break some of those
Yeah.
down, and then let's document the changes we've made, and let's bring it back in 2 weeks and show it to them.
Yeah, and I would love if you guys wanted to consider the texting too, because it's like,
Yes.
it's like Facebook, especially if you're elected, you don't ever wanna be on Facebook. People say mean things on there.
What is this
know.
Facebook thing?
What is this book face you speak of?
But texting, a text alert would be awesome, cause, you know, most people will at least look at, oh, there's something going on.
And
I
for these
would-
smaller ones where it's a done deal, if you don't want to have those meetings because you don't think, like, because then the perception could be
Yeah.
there that it's already done, would it be best then just to send out maybe some informational piece that just lets
There's
them
still
know
gonna be
that
a
this
public
is
hearing at planning
happening,
commission.
you know,
We
the
still-
date that
yeah.
this
That's-
actually
yeah.
was approved, you know, why it is a done deal, and then just kind of let them know that this is informational and this is why we're giving them this information so they can be aware.
Yes.
And then that way they don't have to have this
I,
many meetings
I
as well.
definitely like that, because again, the perception is, again, it's a done deal. Well, it is if it meets
Right,
certain
right,
criteria.
that's true.
So to be able to educate them of why they're allowed to do this small subdivision and that it is permitted as long as they meet these parameters, that's again a positive thing, because now they understand that it wasn't just a check in the box, it was, yes, it's a check the box because it meets this, and this.
And the explanation you mentioned, Tammy, I think would make a world of difference of, this is when it was approved, this is what it's approved for. This is not a city council decision, right? That sort of thing. And then I think adding the text of the council, why the council's not there and the purpose
The
of the meeting.
statement read.
Yeah, that's, well, I think if we
We can
add
even add
that,
to the
Oh,
notice.
we
that's
can
just,
add that to the
that's
notice.
just standard we put on, if we add that to the notice, and
Yeah.
then it's on whatever materials are handed to them that night in addition to reading it. Like, I don't think you can overstate that enough.
No, I agree.
Jared, I've worked with community councils for many years, and I love them. I was so excited that Herriman has this program, and I've met with our facilitators and have told them that I believe that we are just at the beginning of their influence and opportunity to play a role in the city. I'm wondering, Sandra, if maybe the next time when we have a group meeting with all the facilitators, if we ask them, what changes would they like to propose that are unique to the
Yes.
policy? And maybe what can we do to take that next step, kind of growing their role and influence in the city?
We have asked that in the past. It's the getting the participation sometimes
Yes.
in there.
And
It's hard.
yeah,
It's amazing to me how many people we have attend these meetings, but yet to be part of the solution, sometimes they don't want to attend.
yeah,
Because, like, for example, being a facilitator, there's some that are regulars, and I will say, hey, do you want to be part of the program? I don't have the time, so that's their hard
and
part is.
I've got some ideas
Yeah.
of what we can do to foster greater interest and participation, from what I've seen in other communities. So I don't know how often do we have those group meetings, is
I
it?
do them quarterly.
Okay, so next time, I'd love to come.
Yeah, and good job. This is no reflection on you or by the way. It's just.
Well, I'm not frustrated with you guys
Yeah,
by
at
any
all.
means.
I actually, again, have had a lot of very positive feedback about this program being implemented and the fact that they feel like they do have another opportunity to address things even earlier in the process. And I know that both of you guys have put a lot of work into that, and I appreciate the work.
Yeah.
Because
Even those
it's making a difference.
Even those complaints I've gotten have been, this seems like a good idea, but it's not. It didn't go the way we thought it should have, sort of thing. Maybe I should just make clear, I have no problem meeting with neighborhoods at any time. Any reason, I just don't wanna do it as a result of it. So,
No, it's good. And I think anytime.
Jared said he no longer wants to meet with residents.
Just make it a work meeting.
I think anytime we implement a program, it's responsible to come back and revisit it every year anyway. Talk about what's working, what's not, how can we.
right.
I
So
appreciate
just
the
for
discussion.
clarification for staff, and my understanding, the changes we're making right now is to include the statement at the beginning of the meeting and on the documentation, correct? We're not intending on having us go to these meetings as of right now, since we are now getting the recordings. We'll do that for now until we discuss it again. Is that kind of where we landed on that as far as?
We're gonna capture all this and bring it back one more time.
Right, we'd also like to capture those meetings that after they with the facilitators and bring that information back.
Yes.
Yeah, and text, I think that's
And the
great.
text, yeah.
Because sometimes algorithms on Facebook, maybe you don't see the message until 2 weeks later. I don't know, it's fast.
Okay.
Perfect.
Anything we missed?
I think we capture all that.
Okay.
Sandra?
All right, if we don't have any more questions or comments on this one, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item. 3.5, discussion of the Creek Ridge development. Jordan.
Okay, I wanted to talk about 5 and 6 kind of together, and so we'll go pretty fast. The Creek Ridge one is the development agreement that basically eliminates 270 units, and it's tight, and it's connected at the hip with the Mountain Ridge development agreement. And what I want to do is,
So we are talking about them together.
yeah, I'm going to talk.
Clarify, because last time this was presented, you said they're not tagged. This is, we're looking at these completely different, but now we're kind of.
I believe in my heart of hearts that doesn't happen, the other one won't happen either.
Okay, so that's, I just want people to understand that they didn't just wanna come in and eliminate 270 units, it was
I was
scratching back.
profile, right?
Yeah. So this is where it's at, and you've seen that, and the council was more than happy to eliminate units. And one of the directions was to take it out of Area A. And I'm gonna go to this, so. So this was the site plan that the developer came and showed the city council before he started the process. So this is kind of what we're looking at. A lot of things were explained, the, storm drain will go into a little more detail of that, but the parks, there was,
The church.
some multifamily in the church and the school and all this stuff. And I'll go through some of the amenities that were associated. This did not have the slip roads on the first round. In fact, let's see, there we
There's a
go.
lot of them, how many do you wanna go
So
through?
each one of those rounds came through, and this is kind of what we've shown the council with the slip ramps, the two big parks, kind of the density state, just things moved around. Then the developer started meeting with the neighborhood. And so he got some feedback, and so he made changes to this plan. And after the first meeting, nope, that was the one he still showed you. So he made,
Oh, go back,
which one?
go back. That one. That's when you moved the church
Oh, okay.
over to that side.
Moved the church and the density over here, that's when the people cheered, because they didn't want it by them. And so basically saying, he's made an additional plan, now there's commercial, I think there's 6, 8, 5, 7, 8, something like that over there. And then the housing, the park was moved over here where the housing was concentrated, so they'd have the still neighborhood park, these parks, the trail, the storm drain, the slip ramps, the improvements of the landscaping in the schools, and all the things that we talked about. And so what has happened, he went to the planning commission after those neighborhood meetings. He still continues to hold those neighborhood meetings, talking to them, getting feedback. The planning commission, you had Chris come and talk to you, and some of the concern that Chris brought up was, does the planning commission want to entertain this density out here? And the issue I wanted to bring back to the city council was,
Sorry, let me stop, what is all the yellowish, brownish color, single family?
Single.
Okay.
That's all single family on that side, yeah.
they're just single.
And can I ask one more, just a clarification question on this plan? So there was some addition of some commercial in there.
Yeah.
How did that affect what was in there originally as residential?
So Gordon, if you go back, they moved the park down, you can see, and put the commercial up there.
Uh-huh.
This plan was about 750 units, about 310 condos. And then if you flip to the new one, it's like 715, I think.
So they just eliminated some.
And then
whoops.
it's like 210 condos.
Okay.
So most of it all came out of the condos.
If I remember correctly, what part of this is already zoned as commercial?
The whole piece right there.
None of it's zoned
None of
It's
commercial.
all master
General
plan
plan.
commercial.
It's general
General
plan
plan
commercial
is
on that side.
But
It's all
zoned
A1.
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 Yeah.
So right now, their only option is 1 acre lots or commercial.
And the other thing that I think is key for us to remember also is we went through a big referendum process, had all that hubbub, and not hubbub, I shouldn't be disrespectful, but all that process. And, we promised the public that we'd be very transparent, we'd allow them to go through this process. And then we changed that. This body changed that since I was elected because we felt it was vital to preserve that chunk commercial. Now, I understand the school came in and took a chunk of it, but for some reason, we thought it was vital enough that we pushed that through for that whole piece. And so it makes me really concerned to say we no longer need that commercial. We felt it was vital to have it. So where did that vitality change? How come it's no longer vital for us to have that?
So let me just kind of characterize a little bit more. When we rezoned, or not rezoned, when we master planned, there was like 11 sites that we brought through the city planning commission. The planning commission recommended against this being commercial. And one of the reasons is when we did the
study,
the market study.
better,
Anyway,
whatever it
the
was.
words will come to me in a minute. They had suggested that we might be overreaching the level of
Right.
commercial we did there, and the planning commission
Felt that was the case.
The city council, on the other hand,
It's
was,
about like 3 acres too heavy on
And the city council has suggested that we're not getting commercial elsewhere, we need to at least start preserving some other, that was the intent. It wasn't that this spot, but, and if we're not getting any commercial, we need to start preserving some commercial. And so, the way the city council did that is, despite the planning commission recommendation, they put this down as to hold it for commercial. And so, I'm not saying that it was vitality, I don't think that was the criteria that was going on, it was just that we're not getting commercial, and we need to start finding ways to get that into the
Oh, if we
Well,
don't preserve
along
it, it disappears,
And
you never
along
have the
this
opportunity.
corridor, because we have very
Right.
few places, and this is actually has access to the corridor, cause there's gonna be a right in, right out
Right in, right out. And so, the issue is, the school district has this, and of course, they're not subject to our zoning or our general plan. Now, there's a good chance that they could trade this site, now they do need a junior high over here, and Brett's busily working on this.
We don't want the junior high there, Brett.
I would prefer us.
We don't.
I know, he's trying to move it,
Find property for them
that's what I'm saying,
elsewhere
Brett's trying to move it.
and make this a park. That's where my goal is, at CM. But there is, developer landowners that work a lot with the school district, that they may swap property, and it's out of our control.
But if they swap property at the school district, then it
They're still
comes back
subject to
into
the
our
zoning.
control.
It means
Yeah, it does.
we
We
can't
can-
purchase it
so-
from Park, it'll end up
so-
being some type of a development.
Yeah, so what would happen is, before they swap this out, likely,
We have to go through the process.
the developer would want to know what their
he's gonna
zoning
be able
is
to
getting,
do.
and if it's probably still master plan commercial, the trade may not happen and still stay school.
Or it may happen because it's a commercial property right on Mountain View
No,
corridor.
I'm not arguing the
right in,
points,
right
I'm just
out.
saying, the tone and demeanor of developers today is they back out the hill and leave it with the school district. That's what I'm saying.
So I think there's gonna be an opportunity for us, and Wendy's never a passionate person with, on this, we don't have programmable space on that end of our city, I'm trying to find spaces that we can have programmable space. I think you all know what I'm talking about when I say that, and, it's just not enough, just not enough for our kids.
So I guess the city council can look at this as open space, do you want continuous commercial, is this going to be?
I'm honestly not concerned about that right now. Is there
All right.
anything else regarding
Sure.
this?
Okay, so
I am
let me stay with this piece right here. So, did we include let me make sure I'm going the right way. Okay, so slip ramps, okay, here's what we want to show
That's
you.
what we want to show.
So we've talked about the storm drain, and I wanted to kind of make sure everyone had a kind of a good concept for it. So we have these detention ponds in Rosecrest,
Retention.
RSL, Salt Lake Community College.
Are they retention or?
And even
They're
Retention
all
today.
retention.
And even UDOT.
Okay, and which one's which?
Okay, that's
Detention
RSL,
drains.
this is Salt Lake Community
Detention never
College.
drains, detention does drain.
Yeah, sorry,
Retention,
detention
retention
drains,
does not drain.
retention holds forever, you retain it forever. So what happened is, we have right of way up to a point, and then we go into river, actually up to this point. We need to be able to get all this water, and this water all drains above the mountain core, so this is basically, every one of these drainages get collected, get stored, and then get pumped out over to this Rose Creek and then flowed into a river. This is, for a long time, it didn't bother us. Well, it always bothered us. But we knew that this project would get going, we'd move forward. Now it's hitting a critical mass that the city is either going to have to go in and start condemning and purchasing property to get this thing done, because the time is of the essence. We have enough development, enough water. Last year, we had our first time ever water overflowed into Welby Jacob. It was a very bad situation. We don't want to have that discussion again. So we have some critical elements, and that's why you keep hearing engineering and everybody keep harping on storm drain. That's a big, big deal to us right now. It affects everything we're doing. So we either got to start condemning and purchasing and building this thing, or we got to work to figure out how to get it for free. Free is great. Purchasing,
Free, go back, cause there's never free. Explain what you mean by free.
no dollars spent. No dollars
John's
spent.
gonna go through the development agreement and then.
So I wanted to just explain, make sure everybody understood what we're trying to solve.
Thank you, that was the question that I've been asking for 4 months now.
Okay.
Because I think this is the core of the issue, where we got to as we're talking amongst ourselves in between, like, why are we even looking at this? What's going on here? Why are we, if they're just asking, can we move density from here to here? If that's the question, then this is a pretty easy conversation, but for some reason there's something that doesn't feel right about this. That's not what this is. We're acting like we have to do this for some reason. So I posed it at the last council meeting of, look, one, what is the issue or problem we're trying to solve? If there is one, let's work the problem and decide a path to go on. We haven't decided that option 2 is the way to go. We never had that conversation, right? We never had this level of conversation, right? To go back to the meeting in June, it was, we're gonna have to do something for stormwater, here's the idea, and my comment afterwards was, that's an idea, I wanna see all the ideas.
Okay.
If at that time it was, well, we have to do something so that when the high school can get their occupancy, well, if this is the school district's problem, make them pay for it. How come they're not at the table, right? What are the other options? If this is something we knew is going to come, and this is the day of reckoning, why have we not planned for it, right? What are the other contingencies? There's gotta be more than 1 or 2 options, but if we're at the point where there's 1 or 2 options, option number 1 has to be seriously considered.
Right, so I think option 1 is go ahead and buy the right of way, build all the infrastructure, and come out to Rose Creek. I think that was the option from the very beginning. We always had that. When the very first plan was drawn, we saw this channel. We knew we weren't allowed to get any stormwater through neighboring communities, so we had to find a route to Rose Creek.
And have we been setting aside any money?
Yeah, we're ready to spend it.
So, we have the money set aside to do it?
Yeah, we can give you the full amount. I think right away was just under $1 million, and then the channel that we'd have to dig is about $1 million.
So 2 million?
Plus or minus some rough numbers. There's landscaping, vegetation. When we're in Riverton, we'll have to get a permit. They'll probably want us to landscape things and do things, so there's some additional costs of irrigation and other stuff that would do, trails, stuff that would keep adding to the cost, but
Okay.
just for the basics.
Okay, a follow-up question then. You mentioned a few minutes ago the word condemnation. Do we have a willing seller if we choose to go that route? Do we have a willing seller that we can actually make that
Great
work?
question.
Or do we have to go through a different process in
Because it
order
sounds
to
like we
obtain the
have
land?
planned properly, like you would for any project like this. If the money's been collected, then what's the issue?
Your issue's in Riverton, because the homes will get built, and then you're not just buying property.
Yeah, but we would buy it before the homes go there. So we could go through and buy it, would they be willing to sell it? We could ask them. The intent was to get it for free, but.
Who owns that? But
This is all SLR.
All SLR.
But
all
the thing
SLR.
about it, that's what I assumed, but the thing about it is there is a price tag to free, and it's density.
So what we did is that to keep it density neutral, the city would not change the amount of units, period. So basically, you would eliminate them up here, and then you would have them here, and now you have a storm drain, now you have the parks, now you have slip ramps, now you have.
But there's no increase in density.
But there's no
just
density neutral, because right now, that's
You're talking
low
across
Oh,
2
okay.
properties.
that's
So-
low density residential primarily.
So let's talk about that briefly. And this is what we were talking about earlier. This piece of property right here is part of the Rose Crest development agreement.
A tiny chunk of it.
Yeah, that piece of it. Again,
Everything behind the elementary school, correct?
Yeah.
right, just kind of a straight line through here. This piece is SLR, and it's currently zoned 1 unit to the acre. We have a general plan for this property of something.
Low density residential.
Low density,
So,
1.8.
1.8 to 2.5, yep.
right, so what Bryn did is she went and ran a calculation. If we used our general plan, it's not zoning, so it's not entitlement, but it's general plan. If we did our general plan, so this has its entitlements, and we gave the general plan entitlements that and so on the commercial, if it just went to the same kind of thing up through here, we calculated the number of units it would be. So if you just followed your general plan. Now, again, you don't have to, you can go 1 unit to the acre, but I'm saying if you follow the general plan, and then you transferred 270 units from Creek Ridge, then you're net zero from your general plan.
Okay, so you're saying that the turquoise color at 1.8 units plus 270,
plus the.
Plus the
Plus
entitlements
the
for
5 units per acre on
Rosecrest.
the Rosecrest piece.
and giving nothing on a commercial.
Well, the
All that-
commercial
that's
was,
getting rid of all that commercial.
But see
Commercial.
what I'm saying, so it's not net neutral if you talk about, that is supposed to be commercial, that's supposed to be zero residential, so how could it be?
well, what I'm saying is,
Density neutral.
what we did is we looked at the commercial saying, again,
That it would be residential.
if it was the same
We did it
general
low
plan,
density.
if we follow
We
the
did it like 10
planning
different
commission
ways.
recommendation, not saying we should or shouldn't, this is just a exercise to give you an idea
Of numbers.
of numbers. So if this commercial was done residential, according to what the general plan had adjacent to it, and what the previous general plan was before we changed the general plan.
So, sorry, I have to interject at this point, because at the time we made that change to the general plan, part of the reasoning was, so the commercial was for the reasons that we stated, preserve that along Mountain View. But the specific conversation around the low-density residential was to help balance out, in my view, the mistakes that were made to the south. It's too dense in those areas. And that was a specific part of our conversation at that time, was this needs to be low-density residential to balance that out. And if we have that adjacent to the commercial, that will help balance this area. So I get where the argument can be made that it could be net neutral. I kind of decided with Sherry on this one, if you're essentially adding density to what the general plan says, that's not net neutral. If you're talking just about the 270, swapping it from here to here, that could be net neutral. There could be perceived benefits to that, but it puts more pressure in this area. Why? The question I'm asking is why would that in and of itself make any sense for us to do?
So that's a good question. So here's what we saw, and you can judge these things. So with that density change, we're getting, so if you remember going through the process with the Danzies, and you think about how many soccer fields you got out of that, and that's 300 acres. This is a lot less. We're getting a much more percentage of park property. We are now getting this, where any other development, this would just be walls right behind this.
That's like if we sorry to stop you there, but if we, and I think we have to say this for the public, if we decide to go with option number 2, right? So we're talking about an issue to solve here, the stormwater issue. Or option 1 is we just do what we normally would do and buy that property and build it as part of the overall plan.
Again,
right?
provided we have a willing seller.
Right, if not, we have to go through the condemnation process, that's what it's for, and we can talk about the seller and this whole issue, because at the time that we made that change, they did not like that we had changed that to commercial. They wanted to do high-density residential there, and we told them no, and they didn't like that.
Right.
And so what did they do? They did the same thing that Doug Young did on the Teton property and said, well, we'll just sell it to this school district, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Well,
And now we have part of this problem.
So here's what I'm looking at. You asked what is the issue? For us, the big issue is of course the storm drain, and I tried to illustrate that last drawing. So here's what I want you to start putting on the ledger. So at least $2 million in net favor of the city. The city ends up, again, arguably net neutral from the general plan if that comes. You lose density over here, you come here. We get an extraordinarily unique opportunity to get these slip ramps that I think really change the game for how a city looks and the entrance. I like what they've done here with a trail now. The houses are facing across. You don't have if you look at everywhere else, it's the back of fences along trails. I think some other things that are really kind of key for this development is that they just put 7 acres of commercial, and so basically, this is going to be a hard area to get commercial just because it's getting further deeper. But now you're starting to set a trend, so at least that makes more sense. So you're starting to set the pattern of commercial. So I think there's a number, so it's not any one thing. When you start talking $2 million, you're talking the transfer of
You
units
show
from the
them side
denser
by
area.
side, right?
Yeah, so I'm just saying,
That's where I'm going with this, is that like we said all along with this option, is I'm willing to consider anything, but you have to show me the pros and the cons, show me the alternative.
And I want us to also part of that calculation to understand that if we give up commercial for residential, that is a cost to us. You say this is gonna cost us $2 million, Well, that's gonna cost the city a lot of money over the period of time too, because residential is always a cost to the city.
Right.
So if we give up our commercial for residential, we're just absorbing a lot more cost into the city. So do we say we pay the 2 million up front and preserve our commercial, or do we absorb the cost of the residential?
So we're not getting 7 acres there, we're giving up another 20%.
Right, so let's just talk about this. So what I would suggest to you, we are right now in the process of trying to get commercial on the Mountain View corridor. And while every place could have commercial, this is probably like a 50-year, just.
But I have to go back on that, Gordon. We are trying, but there are companies that want to come to Herriman, and it is not because they don't want to come here. It's because there are some landowners that are prohibiting that.
It happens to be the same one.
So we definitely have companies that will bring commercial to
Okay,
Herriman.
now that topic is why I think we make this commercial. That's the
Exactly.
topic.
Anyway,
And we're
I
still
don't,
working on that detail.
sorry.
No, but what I'm
there
saying
are
is,
companies that will come here.
but what I'm saying is, this may be a place they wouldn't come.
I personally,
That's the issue, is it gets real deep. It's harder to get you back. If you show this to commercial vendors,
yeah,
it's a
I
little
don't
bit difficult.
disagree with you at all, Jerry. Cause I think all of us have hopes for that. The one thing that does, I mean, just to play devil's advocate for 1 second, the reality is we have several other commercial parcels that, with willing sellers, that we've had that way for a long time, that we still don't have people on. You know, so, yes, I want as much commercial as possible in here, but again, even if we have it designated, there really still is no guarantee that that's
But once you put a
ultimately
house
what we
there,
get
there's
there.
a guarantee there will
You
never
never
happen.
get
No,
that.
absolutely agree with that, absolutely agree with that. The hard part is again, this whole timing game, how long do you
Well,
wait?
we were told by the landowner and the developer of the auto mall project we've done our studies, that's never gonna be commercially viable. Never. We don't wanna have anything to do with it. Right? So we told them put in a 5-year sunset. Guess what? Not only is it viable, but something real is gonna happen there. So, you never know what's gonna happen and what interest is there. Our efforts have been circumvented.
No, you're right.
In several areas as Sherry is trying to.
Well, the old
illustrate
adage
in a-
holds true.
in a
We're
delicate
not making
way.
any more land.
Well, yeah, and we don't have a lot that we're still trying to, besides the auto mall, what commercial property do we have sitting there that's right on Mountain View corridor?
No, and I
We have-
guess,
Well, pretty much none that people don't wanna buy.
I hear your concern. So here's what I'm looking for tonight, is that the planning commission is starting to see this. You heard the concerns last time from Chris. And so what we want to do is make sure we're not chasing our tails with the planning commission. Again, back to the general plan issue, I wanna make sure that if we're giving clear direction to the planning commission, it sounds like we need to come back to you guys a little bit more with a pro-con list of detail, because again, the planning commission was starting to go to a direction of just single family through here, which isn't bad, isn't wrong. And what I'm suggesting is, if that happens, a lot of those other things, and for staff, we need to start directing them to start going down the process of purchasing land, going forward with that process. So we,
Yes.
That's the decision, and that's the conversation we've never had, is do we go with buying the land and doing the stormwater that way? Or do we go this direction?
Well,
We've never had that
Yeah,
conversation.
and I had this conversation with Michael a couple weeks ago. Here's my concern, is that we have a developer in here, and every time you redo this, it costs time and money. And then our staff is having to review it, and we're spending time and money. And if it's never gonna fly past here, why are we spending any time or any money getting to that point? We have to understand what's palatable here, what are our options, what would we consider moving forward with before we waste everyone's time? That's my,
So it sounds like we need to come back next week, or in 2 weeks, with some more clarity on what the storm drain is and get some good direction on that.
And I wanna just chime in here real quick, Gordon. I don't foresee me changing my mind on what we have currently on the general plan with the commercial. it would have to be the most spectacular, presentation for me to think that getting rid of commercial now in that location is worth it. Even if it costs us a couple $1 million to get the storm drain in, it to me isn't worth it. So that's where I'm sitting right now, and that's a high bar for someone to overcome. And so I just wanna make that clear so that we're not coming back 2 weeks from now and saying, well, that's not what was said.
There was a comment that was made at the community meeting the other day, and it talked about, it would be awesome because these people will be able to walk down and go shopping. But what you have to understand is if these people
Shopping in
walk
another
down, they're shopping in another city. And so what we're doing is building a bunch of houses so people can walk down these beautiful roads to shop in another city. And
That was meant about the shops that we would be building on the corner.
no,
There's
that was
100
before this. That was before the commercial was there.
That was in light of changing that corner though,
Yeah, well,
to 120,000 feet.
that was my concern when I heard that. I was like, I don't wanna build a bunch of houses so people can walk down and shop in another city.
At the same time, I express overall frustration. I will give credit where credit is due. I mean, Steve and his group have been good to listen and make changes,
yeah.
etc. And some of the ideas here are fantastic. The slip road, I can't say enough about how great I think that is. The houses facing the trail, the parks, etc. It's just, those are great ideas and they're sales points, but we have to fundamentally make the decision of, is this how we wanna solve the stormwater issue? Or do we just buy it, keep it single family, and what does that plan look like? What's the alternative? Like, what are we comparing it to?
Yeah, and I wanna echo Jared, my concern about this and why I'm saying that is out of respect for you guys also. It's like, I don't want you guys to keep coming back and dealing with this and having more meetings if we're just gonna say, no, that makes no sense, and I agree. Every time I see the concessions made and different designs happen, listening and trying to do, what's been pushed back to you, so thank you for that.
So let us work with the developers, see what we can do, we'll be back talking to you.
Anybody else wanna be a board?
I'm done, so
Oh,
I'm.
yeah, I don't.
We have some more things on here.
Yeah, but
Before we go to our general meeting,
I'm finished.
so,
We gotta come back in for work meeting.
so with that, I'll accept a motion to suspend our work meeting and go into regular session.
So moved.
Say,
All in favor?
Aye.
Expectations.
what a spirited board meeting.
That's what happens when I'm on the road all day.